We start with that Matrix superfan having a little cry on his flimsy wooden throne. Now his third immediate family member's been killed after his wifey bird and his phony fakey grandson got themselves blown out of the sky by a giant dragon. And also his homosexual son faked his death and rode off on a small boat with his boyfriend. Who's Sam Sheet? Whilst elsewhere, Sir Kristen parades the head of Princess Rhaenys' defeated dragon Meleys through the streets as some kind of desperate attempt to show how much of a badass King Aegon is. But the stinky plebs, who are all currently enduring a nasty famine, reckon it's a bit of a bad omen to be flaunting the head of a revered godlike being, and worry that this will just inflict even more bad fortune and misery into the city. But Sir Kristen just doubles down and carries on boasting about the Eggy King's strength and victory to the sound of tumbleweeds in the streets. And before he can say,
"Please clap,"
the maesters get to work trying to save the king, given he got roasted by his brother and not in the jovial way. And as Aemond gets a raging lob on, watching them work on his battered bro and giddily exclaiming that now someone's going to have to take his place, Alicent feels proper sick about her one-eyed Lucius Malfoy cosplaying son being next in line for the throne, so promptly goes over to her Prince of Persia looking lover boy to find out what the fuck happened over at Rook's Rest. But he's too traumatised to think properly after surviving the equivalent of a nuclear explosion, and just tells her to sod off, because he's currently too busy stroking his stiff and solid sword. Just steady. Meanwhile, the Council of Gammons are busy mansplaining war to their pussy old Queen Rhaenyra, who just can't believe they're belittling her to her face when they've barely seen more battle than her. Because as much as they want to strike King's Landing now, whilst that giant fuck-off dragon Vhagar is off having a nap after doing all them bad things, they just can't risk the Queen herself going off and getting herself killed. Which naturally makes her more frustrated than your local Trump hater, finding out that the naughty orange man totally survived his recent assassination attempt.
We were a second away! We were a centimeter away from half of the problem being gone, and you missed! We were a centimeter away! Ah!
Also, meanwhile, Prince Jacaerys also gets bored of standing around doing fuck all day whilst his relatives keep dying all around him, so tells his cousin Baelor to keep stum about him about to sneak off to do a risky side mission for their cause. Over in the countryside, however, local mad lad Prince Damon tries to get the Brackens to make like BLM and take a knee already. But they don't really want to submit and have to work alongside their mortal enemies the Blackwoods who have already yielded, so instead calls his bluff and begs to be incinerated already. But because he needs them alive and thus be part of his army, he totally cucks and lets them go, before instead setting his goons on their wives and children to give them nothing else to live for and thus leave them no choice. Elsewhere, Rhaena tries to convince Lady Jane Arryn to deliver the promised 15,000 men already, given she's followed through in their bargain to give her a pair of dragons. But unfortunately, she don't want no stinking pussy old embryos what are still in their eggs, and instead just says sorry about her granny's death and stuff. Back at Dragonstone, the Queen's still whining on about the misogynist gammons in her council patronising her all day, and reckons if she was born with a sausage between her thighs, then she might have been allowed to go out and get stuck into the warring already. But my Syria says, well, you might not have to, girl, because the plebs over at King's Landing are starving and being totally ignored by them Royal Hightower lot what keep parading sacred heads through the streets and hanging rotting human bodies up like perverse decorations. So I'll go do what I do best and start turning people against them via the delicate art of spycraft, aka sending a few of my girls out to spread lies and poisonous rumours all day. Just like current day legacy media and stuff, cause they don't call me the white worm for nothing, girl. But before she can say, I dunno, because the last time he tried to help, a baby was beheaded in his bed and the war escalated tenfold, we cut over to Harrenhal, where Damon's being plagued with saucy dreams about his own mother. And before he can say, holy inappropriate incest dreams, Batman, Queen Alicent's having a bit of a nightmare herself, after the Grand Maester reports her son's totally fucked and the court all appoint her cycloptic psycho son as the interim king.
Oh shit, not good.
Meanwhile, Hugh the blacksmith and his starving wife try to get their sick daughter the heck out of Dodge before it's too late. But unfortunately, Aemon's ordered for the city to be locked down, presumably because someone's gone and tested positive for a new COVID variant or some shit. And whilst Jace negotiates the trading of Harrenhal and his dragon's protection with the show's third set of frigging twins this season, and in exchange for passage across the bridge and into the Riverlands whilst demanding they declare their loyalty for his mum already, that witchy bird totally bollocks the naughty Damon for naughtily setting his grubby goons on the poor Bracken wives and children. and says trying to get men to join your army by making them widows and also making them hate your guts probably ain't a good idea, son. But before he can consider the error of his naughty ways, Simon turns up and says all your naughty doings totally worked out, bro. And the Brackens have totally cucked and pledged fealty to you and she. Mainly because their wives are all dead and they can't iron their own shirts and stuff. Elsewhere, Baylor consoles her depressed granddad, now poor Rhaenys is brown bread and his castle is totally empty. And although he tries to make her his new heir of Driftmark, given poor Luke got munched up at the end of the first season, even she don't want his stinking wooden chair, what looks like it gives you splinters in all the wrong places. Or maybe all the right ones. Anyway, Rhaenyra tells the lead council Gammon that she'll overlook his constant microaggressions and undermining of her authority just because she's useless in war and also has a fanny. If he now goes over to Daemon and asks him what the fuck is taking so long, given she's starting to suspect that the incestuous baby killer might be a bit of a wrong'un and planning to raise an army to take the throne for himself. But said Daemon bloke's not doing too well, to be fair, after being woken up in the dead of night and bollocked for letting his rapey psycho goons loose on the entire village. Because now all hell's also broken loose, and the Blackwoods have taken the opportunity to totally pillage the entire Bracken town after wanting to destroy their centuries-old rivals for fucking centuries. And they did all this whilst under his Targaryen name, which has naturally poisoned the town against him and now made him look like a callous, unhinged tyrant who don't give a stuff about anyone but himself. And before he can say,
yeah,
they double down and insist they'll never follow a batshit blonde bloke what orders grubby rat catchers to murder babies in their bed, nor that dreams about being balls deep in his own mum. And we end with Aemond admiring his prize, whilst the delirious half-dead Eggy King just calls out for his mummy, as Rhaenyra praises Jace for stepping up and securing the passage. And now she's totally done with sitting around on her arse whilst everyone else fights and dies for her cause. But alas, she needs some more dragons on her side to fend off that monster Vhagar thing, given Aemond will likely soon press his advantage. So Jace suggests finding some more dragon riders, given they've got them two wild unclaimed ones called Silverwing and Vermithor uselessly slumbering under the castle without even paying rent. But unfortunately, they would need to have Valyrian blood for the beast to accept them as riders. So naturally, Jace advises looking at their family history to see if anyone's remotely suitable. But because the local library is closed due to council budget cuts and given the Ancestry website is offline, he instead suggests they look up their bloodline on www.whatthefucksinmedna.com. And that's it. That's episode 5. Now, my favourite part was how Sir Criston has the gall to use a fresh lemon just to clean his sword, whilst the starving plebs are forced to pick rotting mouldy fruits for their supper.
What a fucking liberty!
But anyway, on to episode 6. We start with interim King Aemond passively aggressively flexing his new power in Gaul, whilst hilariously ignoring his own mum's ideas, and then coldly tells her that she's fired, given she was his dad's advisor and totally pointless now he's dead. And she just can't believe she's been tossed aside like yesterday's dead, and says you're just being a big meanie because you were bullied as a kid by an eggy prince what wanks into the sky and she.
Oh, good lord!
Elsewhere, over in Dragonstone, Rhaenyra asks Sir Stefan to totally nut up and try to tame that giant fuck-off dragon what sleeps under the castle already. Cause after they looked up his lineage on www.traceyourfamilyaffairs.com, they found he's apparently got a sliver of Valyrian blood, and they need as many riders as they can get, bro. And although a few of the gammons totally protest at such an utterly mental and risky scheme what might get the poor fucker burned to a crisp, old Stefan just shrugs, and totally can't wait to try and get his own pet dragon what he could go flying around on and stuff. Meanwhile, Matt Smith in a wig, aka Prince Daemon's, still having them random hallucinations again. And this time about his older brother Viserys, who totally guilt trips him for not being there for him when he was sick and dying of scabs. Before being roused back to reality by Sir Simon, who promptly gets a knife to his neck for his trouble, given the prince is a bit embarrassed and worried about being poisoned and shit. And before you can say, if you're worried about being poisoned, why do you keep taking untested drinks from random weirdo witches then? We cut back over to Rhaenyra's lot, where the Queen's ex-husband's ex-dragon called Seasmoke wakes up from his nap to have a sniff of this pussy old pale honky fella what reckons he's good enough to straddle his fine ass. And for a moment, it looks like it's a match when Smoky Boy seems to swipe right on him. But unfortunately, and much like my Tinder date this morning, the sleepy beast has a change of heart when he sees him in the light, and proceeds to totally roast himself a nice piece of gammon. And it looks like it's curtains for poor Sir Stefan and his innocent mate what just got caught up in the flames and all. as Rhaenyra just stares at their writhing, burning bodies before sodding off and saying,
Sucks to be you.
and before you can say, if you knew this was one of the risks, why wouldn't you have a water bucket ready at least? Lord Corlys can't understand why Sir Alan keeps refusing his promotions and offers to sail with him as first mate and stuff. Because that's like well ungrateful, bro. So instead just orders him to stop being a total melt and report for duty at first light, bitch. Elsewhere, in the local pub of King's Landing, grubby pleb of White, who once accidentally boasted about being a Targaryen bastard and potential heir to the throne in front of the actual fucking king a few epis back, is unknowingly influenced into supporting Rhaenyra by one of Mysaria's spies when she talks about how much of a liberty it is that the royals are all partying and feasting every night on lamb and cakes whilst they're all barely surviving on thin gruel and mouldy fruit. Speaking of, said Rhaenyra Bird gets totally bored of listening to her league council gammon say I told you so about that whole mental dragon plan going tits up, so promptly smacks the misogyny out of him, saying you wouldn't dare talk to me like this if I were a bloke with a tallywhacker between my legs. So you need to start showing me some respect, bitch. And a little later, her new BFF Mysaria reports that the smelly plebs of King's Landing are totally coming around to giving her a chance now there's a deadly famine going on and the phony fakey one-eyed psycho king has locked them all in the city, isn't she? And after totally complimenting her on how badass she looks with a stiff and solid sword in her hand, they discuss a mysterious new plan to make the peasants even more pro-Targaryen. Lord Larys then advises Aemond that ferrying dozens of fresh lambs through the city and right in front of the faces of its starving citizens probably ain't a good idea, son. But the Lucius Malfoy cosplayer just can't understand why they're the ones what's getting the blame when it's Rhaenyra's lot what blockaded the trading ports. And before he can say, maybe it's because we keep having slap-up meals and late-night parties while small minority women can't even get a scrap of meat after queuing up all day for it, Larys shoots his shot and tries to manipulate Aemond into making him his hand. But even the one-eyed, half-blind man can see through such a pathetic self-serving attempt at political posturing,
Oh shit, not good.
and instead makes him personally go call up Otto Hightower and give him the job back instead, before then visiting his poorly bro and telling him he better keep his mouth shut about the whole attempted fratricide/regicide thing last week. Elsewhere, Rhaenyra's out having a walk on babysitting duty, before soon spotting a bunch of freshly roasted corpses. And just can't believe Lady Jane's been holding out on her by hiding the fact that there's another giant dragon sleeping under this castle and all. Anyway, turns out Baldy Sir Alan and his brother Sir Adam are actually the super secret bastard boys of Lord Corlys, and in a shocking twist what no one could ever see coming, turns out these two black lads grew up with an absent father.
No way!
After Mysaria mysteriously confirms to her queen that, quote, the gift is sent, poor Jace has asked what she's bleeding gone and done now, given the last time she had an idea some poor middle-aged knight got incinerated along with an innocent guard. And shortly after, we soon see how she sent a bunch of boats full of fresh food over to the plebs of King's Landing, so she can show that she's the only one what cares about their well-being and essentially bribe them all to come over to her side and shit. And before you can say, I can't believe those in power would shamelessly bribe the public just to boost their own popularity, the city soon descends into chaos when the stinky starving peasants end up having a free-for-all for all the free food, as Hugh Hammer starts throwing fists about and all for a few heads of lettuce. Meanwhile, Alicent's pretty worried about how she hasn't heard from her father Otto in a while, and nor is he replying to any of her letters and stuff. And after having a little cry when she sees how much of a crippled pussy-hole her oldest son has become, she takes his wife, who's also her daughter because reasons, out to pray for his recovery at the city church. But unfortunately, the plebs are in revolt, seeing as how Rhaenyra sent them all a bunch of grub and now the Hightower queens are in town but don't even bother to bring them a loaf of bread. So naturally starts pelting them with rotten fish and smacking up their royal guards, who turn out to be just as useful and competent as the Orange Man's Secret Service agents last week. Anyway, once they get the heck out of Dodge after barely escaping with their lives, Alicent fears their poll ratings are at rock bottom now they can't even feed the people and her guard just publicly chopped off an old man's arm for shits and giggles.
No!
And a little later, Lord Larys has an honest chat with the busted up king, cripple to cripple, and tells him what to expect now he's about to have to live life as a total invalid, before the eggy king desperately pleads for help, given he knows his one-eyed psycho bro is looking for any excuse to totally eat him. And speaking of blonde-haired whimpering melts, Even Damon's out here sobbing into his sleeves after having another dream about not being there for Viserys after his wife Aemma died totally failing to do her one job and cook him up an heir. Or some shit. As down at the beach, Sir Adam's peaceful day off is rudely interrupted by that naughty dragon Seasmoke, who promptly harasses an unarmed local black man simply minding his own business. And before you can say, "Oh good, guess we've got to start boarding up our businesses again for when that BLM lot kick off about all this tonight," he's got him cornered and gazing lovingly into his eyes. Gah, get her room already. And speaking of gay shit, even Rhaenyra and her BFFs getting in on the random romance, as Damon's current wife soon starts snogging his ex-wife, after worrying he's turned against her and then being turned on by Mysaria's childhood story about being raped and impregnated by her own dad. Not a joke.
It was my father who was still a child. He had his pleasure with me. His seed had taken root.
And before you can say, why is this incest story so shocking to the Queen,
Who literally married and had kids with her own uncle?
we end with the guard bursting in to say that some bloke is off having a good time with a giant piece of hot meat between his legs. And steady. Because Seasmoke has been spotted flying about with a newly claimed rider. So naturally, the Queen soon heads off to see who the lucky boy is who now gets to join her war and likely die for her cause and shit. And that's it. That's episode 6. Though my favourite part was how Laenor's ex-dragon Seasmoke rejected the ugly white bloke and instead went out of its way to chase down chocolatey Sir Adam. Cause, much like current Dame Madonna, the ancient crusty beast only seems to want to be ridden by pretty young black boys these days. But anyway, that's the plot and that's your lot. Considering that bell thing so you don't miss any future recaps. Tell me if you like this show in the comments if you have time, and I'll see you in the next one.